was thinking one possible direction for us could be to look at what is the emerging world culture, right? Like while we are citizens of our own culture, uh, I would say there is also a world culture that is emerging, which is across cultures and has elements and has kind of cultural appropriation, freely culturally appropriating the best ideas and wisdom to create something which is a melange of all that. So I thought one direction for our dialogue could be what is it to what is the emerging world culture and what is it to be citizens in that world culture and what could it draw. So that to me seems to be one direction. Another direction seems to be on what is it to reconcile. So let's say we are talking across civilizations. What does healing and reconciliation look like? And what would it need for us to reconcile and to heal?
Reconciliation, there's a lot of work going on, isn't there? But I think none between Indians and, like, there's no reconciliation work with Indians and the colonizers, right?
Yeah.
There is with the Africans, there is with Aborigines, I think,
There is with Africans, you mean in India? Indians and, oh, you mean from the West? Yeah. But there's not with India. Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's mainly because it was the British. That's what I feel, because the Britain, Germany has, recently, I don't know if you saw that, acknowledged atrocities in Namibia. Holland has done some, but Britain, hasn't. I am actually interested in that. I think, because I think they're connected, because I think, and just to say, I think what is a world culture unless there's been some degree of truth and reconciliation go on?
Sure.
Otherwise, it's like, whoop, we're over the top.
Yeah.
Yes.
Totally agree with you.
Yeah. So, because I'm really interested in that too, or we think we all are. But I think this thing of what does it take? What is it, right? And what's it take for that? And I think it takes, I don't think it's separate from in this context, the decolonization investigation. They kind of go together in a way. Because I don't know, but part of my experience anyway of in other contexts, not so much in this, but I don't know if it's ever completely comfortable. Do you know what I mean? I think reconciliation to me is, it's almost like when there's a really full acknowledgement, that and an apology. I think you said, Suruchi, in the beginning. And funnily enough, when I was doing this work with Vandana, she said that too, apology, right? Is I think it's really, really important. And there's not, I feel like in this case, as the apologizer, right? Or you can't expect anything from that, right? It's almost like you have to there's a process that in the fully facing of something, some healing takes place. Because the other way I look at this too is that when something happens and I feel like someone's just avoiding it, if I'm the one that feels victimized and they're just avoiding it, you can't let it go, right? It's somehow there. And but when someone acknowledges something, there's a freedom to say, okay, we're both seeing this from the same place, or I don't know, there's something about that, about reconciliation, which is why denial is so unhealthy, because it means, how can you trust someone who's denying something?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, acknowledgement, I think for the British, for them to actually apologize.
For us.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, to actually apologize would be, I think the world would literally shake if the British actually apologized for colonialism, because I think what's at stake, for us, is something very, very profound. And I think it's like, it's something that's why there has been no apology, So I kind of feel like it's, the reason it hasn't happened is because I think it has to do with this kind of this sort of belief in kind of the superiority, not only of the sort of the British, but of the rational mind and
Yes.
everything that has held such a sway, you know, for so long in the world, you know. So it, you know, I think an apology from the British is not really. I think somehow that's why it hasn't happened, because somehow we still have so much faith and belief in our position of superiority in relationship to the rational mind. You know, that I just think that's something to, for me, it's something to do with that. You know, it's we just can't believe that there is something higher and deeper and more significant than the rational mind. You know. So I do think it's kind of tied up with that. And yeah, and I do feel that if Britain actually apologized, it would actually be a big deal. I mean, it would be different from, say, you know, I mean, because I know the French have recently apologized for things in Algeria, and, you know, Germany has done for Namibia and so forth. But I think for the British to apologize for colonialism would be a massive event. You know, I actually do.
Did they apologize for Jallianwala Bagh? There was something. No?
Yeah, I think there was some apology.
Well, I think that was, it might have even been Theresa May, actually. I mean, I'm not quite sure who it was. Somebody did.
Somebody did,
yeah, for that.
But there's been no apology for like the famines in Bengal,
or even acknowledgement of it, or even acknowledgement that such a thing happened.
No. But you know what else I feel, just trying to feel into this, I think there's also, I agree with you, Steve, I think it's a rationality, but I think there's also a sense of moral superiority. And I think to let in how, you know, really immoral the behavior of the British, you know, was, I think is very shattering at a very deep level. Because there's this whole thing, I mean, the reason that the British, we as a culture felt to do that was the civilizing, you know, whole thing about being civilized, you know, driving, you know, having a civilizing mission. And I think to actually face how uncivilized the culture was, brutally so, you know, is, I think it's an existential thing. I think it's a deep existential thing, because I think you're right about the rationality of being superior, but I think there's still a moral superiority. It's almost like it's shut out. They get furious about this thing about the statues, you know, when people are, because that removal of the statues, whether people agree with it or not, it's a sign that people are saying, this is really bad. This person should not be raised up as an elevated, you know, icon for the culture. You know, they did bad things and more, you know. So I think there's a real revulsion, an unwillingness at a deep existential level to face, in a way, the exactly what is opposite than British, our self-image, I think, which is, you know, the civilizational thing.
That's great, Mary.
That's something there.
That's great. I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's totally right. And there's something about statues. It's almost like, it's like something that's set in stone. It's like, you know, it's so, you know, it's like, you don't touch that kind of thing, you know, because it is like that. It's sort of set in stone, this moral superiority, you know, and it's,
I wonder if the British really also fully understood Gandhi, for example, and what Gandhiji was doing, because a British rational mind reading of Gandhi would be very tactical, very cunning, very devious, whereas an Indian reading of Gandhi would be a very multi-layered, rich kind of. And what is interesting is that Gandhi also kind of applied the scientific method to his own life. His autobiography is My Experiments with Truth.
Mm-hmm.
And what essentially Gandhi is a kind of a scientist
Mm-hmm.
of the personal variety, like making himself the lab, right? And cultivating moral power and soul force and so on, which is kind of beyond the rational mind to fully grasp, because he was out there saying love in face of attack and war.
Mm-hmm.
And that's almost like, to me, Gandhiji and the British represents two civilizations interacting with each other, and one coming and oppressing, and the other saying, I feel pity for you because in oppressing me, you're oppressing yourself and numbing yourself. And there's something there too, I think, to unpack, where the British really understood what Gandhiji was trying to say. And in 1906, he wrote Hind Swaraj, where he is really unpacked the British civilization and why it is not what we want. And of course, we ended up having so much of it as the hangover of a lot of leaders who were deeply impressed by Western ways. I think we lost the plot with not fully being able to have Gandhiji and his ideas. So that comes up for me also, because you spoke about morals, and Gandhiji is a lot about moral power. Through sacrifice, built through active sacrifice. And
exactly.
So there is something about moral power that as a source of power, which I think Indian leaders were able to tap into.
And he was so much about love, right? Just love and compassion, drawing deeply from his Jain roots and Hinduism and things like that. But just coming back to a few of the things Steve was saying, Raghu keeps talking about two things which drive the colonial power and also the colonized way, which is
fear and greed.
No, it's a monolithic religion and bad science which backs it. So if you listen, he'll express it much better, because the combination of these two is so deadly, he says. That they've ruined and influenced everything, when these two things came about, and using one feeding off the other, and just progressing, that just wipes out everything in its way. And then the Muslims, which was God, the book or the sword, and both these religions which came out of the desert. And it always amazes us. We talk about it. What was it about them that just so fierce that they just decimated everything? That was polytheistic.
Yeah,
they couldn't stand it. They just couldn't stand it. They couldn't understand duality. Remember the example I took? I can be an atheist in India and still go and worship in a temple, and an Indian would get this. But the British or whoever, they can't hold this duality.
No.
In fact, even the forced religious identities, like you are a Hindu, you are a Muslim.
Yeah.
You're part of British census.
They made
forced people into one religious identity.
And also into caste. Same thing.
Into caste. Yeah. Yes. So Raghu, in fact, claims that our reading of caste and the way caste happened is in fact a lot because of the British.
Yeah, definitely. That's my understanding too.
Yeah. So it's
but Suruchi, you said about bad science. Can you just elaborate on that?
What does he say?
Yeah, I can elaborate. Yeah. That's why I was saying fear and greed, because fear as a result of the monotheistic religions which promise heaven or punishment and are fear driven, and greed as a result of bad science is like, if I'm using scientific methods to make potato chips more addictive, then that's like, it's bad science. It's science. You're using science in the wrong way without a moral, ethical.
Yeah. So giving you heaven, the idea of heaven, which is material wealth, a big house, everything, research is just driven for that.
No, you're mixing the two, right? So I'm saying one is the monotheistic religion, fear, promise of heaven.
Yeah.
The second is bad science, wealth, materialism.
Also the promise of heaven.
In a certain way.
Yes, right. Material heaven.
Yes. Both feed off each other. That's a good point. So the link between the two. Yes. You're almost using one into the other.
It's great hearing you guys talk about this. I got to say, it's really, really It's wonderful to be able to have this conversation. I mean, this is rare for me to be able to have this kind of conversation about what we're talking about, and also to hear it from you, you guys. I mean, this is just great. I just really, really appreciate it a lot. And I just sort of, I think that makes so much sense. And, you see, because when you say, well, what does it mean that this religion, this religion from the desert came with so much anger and violence, that's a question. It's much harder for me to ask that question than it is for you guys. You guys have a certain perspective on it that I can't really have, simply because of my background. I mean, I can get somewhere towards it, but there's a certain way that you guys see it, right? That is much harder for me to see. It's just like in such a clear way. It's like, where did this come from? It's a really good question. Where did that come from, and what is that really about? And it stands in such opposition to the Indian consciousness.
Yes. And it's still billions of dollars are being pumped into this proselytization. You go to the smallest village in India, the smallest village, and there will be a missionary there trying to convert the people.
Yeah.
Is it like, what is it, man?
Particularly in the places where there's the least education, right?
Yeah.
Right.